It is the ultimate who knows question, but goddamn, I wish more people from S4 would come forth. If Bob really did work with all those people and they really were briefed the same way he was, if we could get more of those people to talk, that would be utterly fascinating.
Well, your show has a big reach, so maybe this time somebody will hear it
Straight
and come
up.
forward.
Did
More people
anybody ever reach out to you that claimed to also have worked with Bob at S4?
A bunch, yeah. And
Did you verify any of them?
no, they could not be verified, and in fact, I think they were lying to me.
And Bob shoots people down all the time. So that guy's fucking standing on a UFO stage lying bullshit. I mean, so
Right.
no, he hasn't even. He was hoping one other employee would. However, I have had people that work at Area 51 confirm parts of Bob's story. One in particular saw him coming off the or he says he saw him coming off the Janet flights. I said, will you go on record with me that you met Bob there on the tarmac? No. Why? Everything we did there was confidential. We couldn't even tell our wives. Why would I go on record with you?
And if he did go on record, he'd probably get harassed or arrested or...
Yeah, he can't even tell you what he ate for lunch out there. And one of the guys I was real excited to talk with just recently passed away. He actually started the bar that was at Area 51. So everybody told the bartender stuff. He started as a flower fund because no one would send flowers to wives when people died out there. But my point is, people have come forward to George, to me. A lot of people are lying, but it adds up over time, man.
I got more than 24 people who have come to me with bits and pieces of the story, who had worked out at Area 51 that I confirmed were out there. Security people who had seen a disc under a tarp in a hangar. Different people had worked there at different times, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, who had little pieces of the story, not to confirm Bob. And then there was one that I pursued. I don't know if you want to keep going on this, but sure. I had pursued this guy. I was trying to find in the early 90s people who were in a position to know about what goes on out there, and I found one. And he had been active in the nuclear weapons program. He had worked for EG&G. He had EG&G had the contract to manage Area 51 from the beginning, all the way through the first 30 or 40 years of it. And so I started basically stalking the guy. One of his sons was a state senator, and he had told me, he confided to me, that you got to ask my dad about UFOs and aliens. And another son had been an FBI agent. So I stalked the guy, introduced myself. There were a couple of public events where I would just show up. And he finally got confident enough in me to invite me to his home. And he gets out these scrapbooks, and he's showing me these stories and clippings and photos from the nuclear weapons program. And I'm watching and taking notes and stuff. And suddenly he closes the book and he goes, "You're not here to talk about this nuclear weapons, are you?" I said, "No, not really." And his wife walks in and she says, "Oh, you're not going to tell him that stuff, are you?" And then he started telling me. And then over the course of 2 years, I would meet with him, have a cup of coffee somewhere. I couldn't take notes. I couldn't record anything, but he told me the story. Now, this guy actually is someone that you've had reference to on your show. Remember Annie Jacobson, her book about Area 51?
Yeah.
Well, it's the same guy, but the story that he told me was different than what he told her. He said that they eventually told me that they had a live alien out there, that I could not go public with this until after he died, that they had craft, that it was in a special spot. Originally it was at Indian Springs, which is now Creech Air Force Base, and then it was moved to Area 51 when 51 became active, and that it was a very small group that tried to analyze this stuff. They didn't know where it was from. They didn't know how we obtained it. He said this thing was alive, and that they eventually were able to communicate with us, and told me that he was going to make a videotape and he was going to make it available so that after he died, I could have it. Well, suddenly, 2 or 3 years later, he totally changes his story. What had happened was there was a congressional investigator. His name was Richard D'Amato, and he worked for Senator Robert Byrd, and he oversaw black budget projects. And he got onto this UFO story from Whitley Strieber. And so he was assigned, find out what the deal is. So he went around the country, talked to different researchers, and came to me and wanted to know about Area 51 and Lazar. So I told him a story, and I told him about this guy. And he got permission for this guy to violate his security oaths and talk to him about it. And they had multiple conversations, and they went to the founders of EG&G, the company, and it became a dead end. But after that congressional inquiry, this guy completely changed his tune. So he made up this story. which is the one that you heard from Andy Jacobson, that what crashed at Roswell was a Russian technology, Nazi technology, flown by the Russians, containing little concentration camp victims who'd been experimented on by Dr. Mengele. Completely ridiculous, story. But I think he got scared. He was a real guy in a real position to know, and had shared with his family some of this information. I think the story that he told me was legit. But if he made the tape, which I think he did, I didn't get it.
How much time has been wasted talking about bullshit
Yeah.
in this subject?
Centuries. Centuries.
That's part of the problem, isn't it?
People just make shit up.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
more fanciful and ridiculous, the better. Unfortunately, people pay more to
Yeah.
hear that and consume it.
I had an operation one time after the Lazar thing, somebody who was targeting me, and he had other people helping him that could convince me that he had worked out there with live aliens. And I'm getting letters from his, supposedly written by his neighbors. Hey, you got to check this guy out, Dr. I'll just say X. He was taken away by armed security in the middle of the night. I think he has something to do with aliens. And from out of the blue, then suddenly I am at a planetarium event, and I'm going to speak about UFOs at some event at this community college. And the guy shows up in a men's room. Hey, my name is Dr. X. Standing there at the urinal. You're not doing a story about me, are you? So no. Who are you? What? This was a concerted effort to get me to believe that he had worked out there. And it went on for a couple of years. And of course, it was complete bullshit. When I finally did dig into his background, I was able to document where he had worked and what he'd been doing through most of his life. And it was just like a fantasy role-playing thing. At least I hope it was.